welcome back. Joining me on the set, I have with me Mrs. Elizabeth Dobynes, president of the Fort Wayne chapter of the NAACP, and Mr. Rick Frazier, president of the Fort Wayne Urban League. And I've asked them to come on to give us some insight to this question that I posed at the beginning of the program. Are civil rights agencies still needed? Again, you have discussions both ways. Some would say that no, we have the laws to take care of these things. Others would say, but discrimination, bigotry, racism, segregation are still rampant in this country, and we still need someone to go out there and make it known. We'll try to look at that and see if we can even come up with an answer. And I'll use Liz and Rick as experts in this field. I want to thank both of you for taking time out of what I know is real busy schedules for both of you to come on and participate in this discussion. Let me just start off with that very question from each of your viewpoints, and I know that each of you have different roles that you play in the community, but are civil rights agencies still needed today?
Steve, I think civil rights organization is very much needed in our community today. With the adverse racism that we've seen happen across the country and as well as in our own city, we are more or less the conscience of the community because our aims and objectives are the same. We are saying that the law should be treated, people by the law should be treated equally in the community. Law should be administrated rather equally. And we are noticing that it's not being done. There's various things going on in our community today, right here in Fort Wayne. And our office getting calls sometimes 15, 20 to 25 per day that some people are being mistreated by a certain segment of the community, and especially in our police department. The harassment and the way they administrate the laws in the inner city and how they do it compared to what they do in other communities is completely different. And if without the conscience of us in there saying, hey, this is not the right thing to do, these things will still go on. And not only in our own city, all across the country, because we meet 4 and 5 times a year on a national and regional basis, comparing communities with each other as NAACP peers. And the same thing is going on all over the country. Seems to me it's a trend and going backwards.
Okay. Rick, your opinion?
Well, without question that there is a need, a continued need for civil rights organizations in this country. All one has to do is look at the gains that were made in the mid-60s and early 70s, and then in the 80s, the rollback of those gains and those rights that were enjoined by many persons, not just minorities, but all persons, have been rolled back by the Reagan administration. And I think it's not even a question in my mind, or anyone who is at least free-thinking in this country and open, that there's a continued need for civil rights organizations to stand in the breach of these rollbacks and, again, attempt to move forward with the equality sign that we all talk about in this country, which means equal access, one man, one vote, to opportunities, housing, education. It doesn't really matter. We are very much needed, unfortunately.
Okay. Now, I guess some would ask then, besides being advocates, what other role do your agencies play in the betterment of the people? In other words, are there things that you are doing that maybe we don't see or hear about that are actually making a difference that we just don't know about?
Well, now, I'm not sure whether people know about some of the things that we are trying to do. Now, grant you, since we are volunteer civil rights organization, you have to work a full-time job. Then you take that little energy you got left after you take care of home and put it in the community and help work. You don't have a whole lot of energy, but we work through committees. We have 14 committees in NAACP. Each one of those particular committees has its own specific role. I would name just a few, for instance. We have our Legal Redress Committee, and that's chaired by Robert Law, Attorney Law. We have, when these people call me and call our agency, telling us what have happened to them in the community. I refer this to that committee. And when Bob went to the paper a couple of times this past year, in 89, a latter part of 89, stating that these things are happening to people in the community, Bob knew what he was talking about.
Okay.
There was a lot of people that didn't agree with him, but he knew. One more committee, the Education Committee. Now, we haven't been as vocal in that committee as we should have been, but we were partakers in this procure. We were friends to that group that wanted quality education integrated with quality education. We was part of that group. We said, yes, that's what our organization been saying for 81 years. The only way to educate us here in America, that we must do it together, and we must know about the contribution of all the people in this melting pot. Not only do we must know about white America, they must know about black America, and that must become an agenda in the school system, that white America must learn the culture and the contribution black America played to the society, as well as what Hispanic America and Asian America and other ethnics that came here. The only way they're going to respect us, they got to know that we helped build America.
That's excellent point, excellent point. Rick, some of the things that the Urban League is doing that maybe we don't know about.
Well, we are, excuse me, we do have a paid staff of sort, and we do provide some direct services to the community. One of the particular programs we have is our Seniors in Community Action Program, where we provide opportunities for seniors, those persons who are over age 55, to be gainfully employed on an average of 20 to 25 hours a week. Other programs, we have our employment program, which we will attempt to provide employment training, help an individual get a resume together, teach them some job skills, some attitudinal skills, and then attempt to match those with the corporate or business world that are looking for people. We also run a youth program called ADAM, in which we have young people that come in, excuse me, we attempt to provide some leadership skills to, at the same time helping them to understand and to move forward into college if that's what they so desire, or technical school, but more importantly is to help them grow and be very responsive young adults as they move into the world of stage, if you will. Of course, advocacy and trying to deal with racism have always been the key cornerstones of the Urban League. And our posture is to mediate those areas and those conditions where we find them. I guess my particular role, as I see it, is that we try to do that not necessarily with a lot of fanfare. Okay. We'd much rather do it behind the scenes to straighten out a discrimination issue than to make a splash in the newspapers or the TV media, because I think that you get more with honey, obviously, than you do vinegar. Yeah. But again, to your basic question, are civil rights organizations needed today? Let me just say that from my view, we are more dangerously close to the conditions that existed in 1967 when we had the riots than we were then. The conditions are the same. If I can use an analogy, we all understand a slot machine and how it functions. You must get 3 cherries lined up. If I use an analogy that in the first window are past history, second window being current stresses, and the third window are those events that may just tip it all off. And right now, those things are present not in just Fort Wayne, but in this country. Okay. And if we look at the deaths that were caused in '67, there were some 43 people that were killed. In just young people in Detroit alone, they killed 54 people in 1988. Okay. So we've surpassed those kind of conditions.
Okay. The thing, though, is that I think we'd have to admit that blacks have, at this point in time, have probably achieved more than any time in their history. Yet we have to wonder, why are we at such a volatile point? What is happening to put us at that kind of point today when we have made these gains?
Yes, we have made gains, and we don't want to minimize those gains. But many of our gains have been individually. Okay. But the race of black people as a race in this country has not been able to move through the mainstream.
Right.
We've got a lot of individuals who've had success, who've gone further than, but then the other side of that coin, however, is that while we start out of a -10, and we are now at a -2, or maybe a +1, the rest of the world, the majority of this country, was already at a -10, and they're now at a +10. They're now at a +20 or 25. And the gaps are widening. Even though we have made gains, the gaps are widening because the majority of African Americans in this country do not have access to the free enterprise system, education. Excuse me. When they rolled back the ability for a young person to get a loan to go to college, that had devastating impact. Back then, we had less kids graduating from high school, but more black Americans going to college. Today, we have less kids graduating. No, we have more kids graduating from college, from high school, but less blacks have an opportunity to go on into college.
And it comes back to basic economics. We just don't have the access to the resources to do that kind of thing.
And in lieu to that, Rick, in lieu to that, Steve, when the kids are getting out of school now, some of those kids have a diploma in their hand, but they still can't read.
Aren't educated.
You see, they can't get into the college. They try. I know this is my family. I'm talking about somebody I know. They came out with, say they had A's and B's. I looked at the report card, but it was in subject with no meanings. When they applied to go to even a college like Ivy Tech, they could not be accepted. That is a disgrace for our educational system to produce youngsters who need to be taxpayers like us to not be able to get in even a 2-year plan. And there's a whole lot of them out there. So we got to look at the structure of our system in education-wise and sensitize the administrators to the need of the best teachers in some of these schools and make sure they are producing good quality students at the end. Let's take my job, for instance. If I didn't produce good work on my job, you think I would have been there 30 years? No way. I have to produce good work. The schools must do so too. If we're going to have people able to even sign our Social Security checks when we retire, they must know how to read and how to calculate. And we'll produce the student now can't even drive across the country because they can't read a map. It's disgraceful.
We know that there definitely are some problems that need to be addressed. What we're going to do is we're going to take a minute break here, and we're going to allow you out there in the viewing audience to call in with your questions and comments on the question of, are civil rights agencies still needed today? We'll be back right after this.